they seem to fly by. They kind of mush together, right?
Yeah.
Syllables vanish.
Hmm.
And you're just left there feeling like you missed, I don't know, half of it, even though you actually know all the words they used.
Yeah.
It's such a common frustration for English learners, especially when you move past the, the careful, slow stuff in textbooks.
Oh, absolutely. It's that classic thing where you can read a sentence perfectly fine, you understand the grammar, you've got the vocabulary, but then you hear it spoken at like normal speed and it just feels like a totally different language sometimes. That gap, the gap between the English you study and the English you hear, it can be really tough. Pretty demotivating, actually.
It really can be. And that disconnect, that gap you mentioned, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. We want to unpack why native speakers can sound so fast, and it's not just about speed, is it? And more importantly, how you, the listener, can actively train your ears, train your brain to catch up, to confidently understand natural, rapid-fire English.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we're drawing on some insights from a source that really focuses on practical, actionable stuff. It doesn't just describe the problem, it offers real techniques. This isn't just theory, it's about tools you can start using, like, right away.
Exactly. So our mission here is to dig into that source material, pull out the most crucial bits of knowledge, really give you a clear picture of what makes English sound fast, and then lay out a practical path, a way to break through what the source calls the speed barrier in listening, the end goal. Simple, really, for you to feel more confident, more capable, ready to actually understand and jump into real conversations.
Think of us as guides, maybe? Helping you navigate this information. We'll zero in on what's most important, explain the why behind these techniques, and hopefully show you exactly how these ideas apply to your own journey towards, well, understanding English more easily.
Okay, let's get into it then. So the first big point our source makes is that this difficulty with fast English, it isn't just about not knowing enough words or grammar rules. You could have a massive vocabulary, right? Your grammar could be solid, you can read complex stuff, but when someone says something quickly, it doesn't click in the same way.
Exactly. It's not necessarily about not knowing the meaning of the individual words. The hard part is processing the language as it's actually delivered, in its natural, connected, flowing form. Your brain might be expecting one kind of pattern, the written pattern, and it's getting something else entirely.
Why does it sound so fast? Our source breaks this down. And spoiler alert, native speakers aren't deliberately trying to confuse you.
No, definitely not. It's simply how natural language works when people are comfortable, when they know the topic, and they're focused on getting ideas and feelings across efficiently. They're not thinking about pronouncing every single sound in every single word perfectly clearly.
Right. And the absolute core reason, according to the source,
Yeah.
is how words connect together. This seems really, really fundamental.
Oh, it is. Hugely important. Unlike writing, where you have clear spaces between words, in spoken English, words rarely stand alone. The end of one word almost always bumps into and influences the beginning of the next one. There are hardly any distinct pauses between words within a phrase.
And this blending, it combines with other things too, right?
Right.
Rhythm, contractions.
Exactly. You've got the natural rhythm of English. You have contractions like don't or I'm. You have linking sounds that pop up between words to make them flow smoothly, and sometimes sounds just get dropped or changed because they seem, well, unnecessary in the flow of speech. Then layer on top of that the speed, the emotion, the tone, which all carry meaning too, and that's what creates that feeling of speed.
Ah. Okay, so understanding fast English isn't about catching every single tiny sound.
Not really, no. It's much more about training your ear and your brain to recognize the patterns of speech, the rhythm, the stress, the flow, the common combinations of sounds as they actually happen.
Our source gives some great specific examples of this connection and reduction stuff. These really help you hear it. Like the phrase, "What are you doing?" said slowly, very clear.
But listen in a casual chat, you'll probably hear something much closer to "what ya doing," or even just "what ya doing." The R gets swallowed, the U becomes ya or cha.
Exactly. "What ya doing?" And another classic the source mentions, "I am going to." Textbook clear. 4 words.
But nobody really talks like that usually. It becomes "I'm going to," almost always. And then in super common relaxed speech, it often reduces even more to "I'm gonna."
I'm going to grab lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear that all the time. These are those shortcuts the source talks about. For a native speaker, they just make things flow faster, smoother, more efficient.
But for you as a learner, even if you know what are you doing perfectly as separate words, when your ear picks up "what you doing," your brain might just stall for a second. It struggles to match that sound stream to the individual words it learned from reading or slower practice. It's kind of like if you always see your friend wearing a suit and then one day they show up in ripped jeans and a t-shirt, you know it's them, but it takes a beat for your brain to go, oh, right, that's still them.
That's a brilliant analogy. Your brain has the formal version filed away, and it's getting the casual everyday version, and there's that slight processing delay.
Precisely. Which leads us straight into one of the absolute key concepts our source really digs into, connected speech.
This feels like the main engine behind it all, doesn't it? Connected speech. Our source defines it as basically how words join together when people speak naturally, resulting in sounds changing, blending, or even just vanishing compared to how they'd sound if you said each word carefully by itself.
Yeah, it's way more than just saying words quickly without pausing. It's about the actual sound changes that happen where words meet. As the source explains it, sounds literally blend. They influence each other.
Like their example, do you want to eat? If I say that super slowly, do you want to eat? Clear. But how does it usually sound?
Very often it sounds more like, do you want to eat? The T in want to often gets dropped or softened, merging the two words into wanna. Or sometimes even more reduced, like "do wanna eat," where the D of do and the we of you smush together into a J sound.
Wow, okay. So sounds don't just blend, they can actually disappear
Yeah.
or combine to make totally new sounds between words.
Exactly. Letters get dropped. That T in want to or got to becoming gonna or gotta is super common. Sometimes the sound at the end of a word changes because of the sound starting the next word, like good boy might sound more like good boy. And yeah, sometimes little linking sounds like a tiny do or y appear between vowel sounds to smooth things out, like in go out sounding like go out.
And the source is really clear. This isn't bad English or lazy speech. This is just normal. This is how fluent, efficient conversation sounds.
This is the authentic sound of the language in action. And the key insight here is the more you actually listen to this kind of connected speech, the more you expose yourself to it. And the more you actively train your ear to pick up on these patterns.
The easier it gets to process it automatically.
Yeah.
So it's like your brain starts building shortcuts for these real-world sound combos. The source had another example, right? Did you help me out?
Yeah. Spoken naturally, that very often becomes something like, could you help me out? That D at the end of could and the Y at the start of you merge into that J sound again. Could you? And help me out just flows together like help me out. Maybe the P softens. The T at the end might become a quick flap sound or even disappear if the next word starts with a consonant. These specific little changes are everywhere but often just aren't taught explicitly.
Okay, so connected speech. The blending, changing, dropping of sounds where words meet, that's a massive piece of the puzzle for understanding speed. What else does the source highlight as crucial?
Stress and intonation, this is another big one. Native speakers almost never give every single word in a sentence the same emphasis or pitch. They stress or emphasize certain words, usually the important content, words like nouns, verbs, adjectives, while other words, the little function words like a, the, to, of, is, are, tend to get reduced, weakened, or as the source says, kind of swallowed.
And this stressing isn't just random, right?
Yeah.
It carries a lot of meaning.
Oh, absolutely. Where the main stress falls in a sentence tells you what the speaker thinks is the most important piece of information, or what idea they might be contracting with something else. The source uses that classic, really effective example. I didn't say he stole the money, just reading the words, the meaning seems plain.
But if you stress the word didn't,
I didn't say he stole the money. The implication immediately shifts. It suggests someone else thinks you did say it, and you're strongly denying that specific action of saying it. Focus. Denial.
okay, stressing the negative. What if the stress is on say?
I didn't say you stole the money. Now the focus is different. Maybe you wrote it, maybe you hinted at it, maybe you thought it, but you're explicitly stating you didn't speak those words. Focus. The act of speaking.
Ah, right, the method of communication.
Yeah.
What about stressing he?
I didn't say he stole the money. The spotlight is now on the person. The implication is someone stole the money, sure, but you didn't accuse them. Maybe it was someone else. Focus. The person involved.
And lastly, stressing money.
I didn't say he stole the money. This suggests he did steal something, but you're clarifying it wasn't the money. Maybe he stole the car or the documents, whatever. Focus. The object stolen.
Wow, okay, same words, totally different underlying messages just based on which word gets the emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding fast speech means tuning into this rhythm, this beat, where the stress lands.
Exactly. And also the intonation, the rise and fall of the voice, it's another whole layer of information that's carried in the sound of the language, separate from the words themselves. Your brain has to juggle processing the words and the stress intonation patterns at the same time to really get the full meaning, especially when things are moving quickly.
And the third key concept the source brings up, which feels connected to this, is chunking. Sounds like breaking things down.
Yeah, but in a specific way for language. It's a really powerful concept for understanding how we process speech efficiently. The source explains that when people speak fluently, they don't really produce or understand language one word at a time. They tend to speak in chunks, groups of words that naturally belong together grammatically and meaning-wise.
Like common phrases or little meaning groups.
Exactly like that. And here's the really cool part. When your brain learns to recognize these common chunks as single units, almost like they're one long word with multiple syllables, you stop needing to painstakingly process each individual word inside that chunk. Your brain grabs a whole chunk much faster with way less mental effort.
So instead of hearing how, then are, then you, and decoding each one.
Your brain hears that whole sound sequence, how are you, and instantly recognizes it as one unit, meaning greeting, asking about well-being. It just processes the chunk, how are you?
Like it's one automatic thought or idea.
Precisely. Or take, do you want to go? Spoken naturally, that often comes out as something like, do you want to go? Or maybe even, do you want to go?
And your brain, once it's trained, stops hearing 5 separate words and starts hearing that combined sound as a single concept of invitation or suggestion to leave but no go somewhere.
That's where the real speed up in comprehension happens. You're bypassing the slow word-by-word analysis. Your brain is working with bigger, more meaningful patterns, which is just way more efficient for real-time conversation.
So where do these chunks come from? They're not just random.
Right. No, not at all. They come from the incredibly common phrases and patterns that you hear and use constantly in everyday language. Things like, how are you? What's up? I don't know. What do you mean? See you later. Nice to meet you. Kind of, sort of, a little bit. The more you hear these specific sequences of words together, and especially the more you actually say them yourself.
The more your brain just automatically bundles them together. They become like pre-made units.
Exactly. It fundamentally shifts how you perceive the language. Instead of a string of separate beads, words, you start hearing a flowing stream of connected sounds that form these meaningful chunks, all guided by the rhythm and stress. Understanding fast English is about learning to navigate this stream, not trying to pick out every single bead individually.
This is really interesting because it implies the solution isn't just about, say, learning more vocabulary faster or drilling grammar rules harder. It's about actually retraining how your brain physically processes the sound of English.
That's the absolute core message from the source. It's very much an auditory and cognitive training process.
Okay, so we've got a good handle on why it sounds fast connected speech, stress, intonation, chunking. Now, the really practical bit, how do we actually train ourselves to handle all this? Our source lays out a whole toolkit, doesn't it? Practical techniques, exercises.
Yeah, this is where we get into the how-to. The source outlines both some foundational practices or mindsets and then some more active, specific training methods.
Let's start with the foundations. The source mentions something really simple, just listening and repeating.
Yes, and they use a good example to show the difference. First, hearing a sentence said very slowly and clearly, like, did you eat already?
Oh.
Each word separate.
Okay, the textbook version.
Yeah.
Versus how it sounds naturally, which is often more like, did you eat already? That D and Y blend into J again, did ya?
Exactly. Did you eat already? The key at first isn't even perfect understanding of why it sounds like that. It's just listening and noticing the difference, hearing that the natural version sounds different from the slow one, and then, the crucial step, repeating that natural version out loud, trying to mimic the sound you actually heard.
Just copying the sound.
Right. Yes. The source really emphasizes listening and repeating as one of the absolute best ways to improve. Doing this daily, even with short, common phrases, gets your ears and your mouth familiar with these natural patterns. It's like you're training your hearing and your speaking muscles at the same time, creating this feedback loop that reinforces the real sounds of English.
And another foundational thing is just, well, noticing common contractions and informal phrases more consciously.
This is all about tuning into the gap between written forms and spoken forms. Recognizing those little changes that add up, like, I do not know written out becomes, I don't know spoken. Or often even, I do know.
Or, let me help you. Sounds like, let me help you.
Exactly. Let me see. Give me that. Kind of, sort of. These are everywhere. Just becoming aware that I do know means I don't know, or lemme means let me, is a huge first step. It connects the dots between what you see on paper and what hits your ears.
And maybe the most important foundation the source talks about is patience and mindset. This isn't going to happen overnight.
Absolutely critical. It's so easy to get frustrated when you're listening hard and still feel lost. The source is really good on this, stressing that training your ear takes time, it takes consistent practice, and it's completely 100% normal not to understand everything right away, or even for a while.
So the goal shouldn't be perfection on day one.
Definitely not. The goal is progress, however small. Think of it like exercise. Every time you listen actively, every time you notice a connected sound you missed before, every time you recognize a chunk, you're building that listening muscle. It gets stronger bit by bit.
And noticing those small wins, celebrating them, must be key to staying motivated, right?
It really is. Focus on what you did understand. The phrase you caught, the main idea you got, the feeling you picked up on. Don't just dwell on the bits you missed. Each little success proves your brain is adapting.
Okay, so with that patient, progress-focused mindset, let's dig into the more active techniques the source recommends. These sound like structured practice routines. First one, shadowing practice.
Yeah, this comes up a lot from language experts, and our source gives some clear steps on how to use it effectively, especially with video clips from movies or TV shows. It's a very powerful method.
And it's not just passive listening, right? The steps are specific.
No, it's very active. Step 1, watch a short clip, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute, without any subtitles. Just try to get the main idea, the context, the general feeling.
Okay, first pass for gist.
Step 2, watch the exact same clip again, but this time with English subtitles turned on. Now you can see exactly what was said, catch words you missed, clarify things.
Got it. And then the main exercise.
Right. Step 3, replay the clip again, but this time pause it after each sentence or maybe each short phrase.
And then?
And then you immediately repeat that sentence or phrase out loud. The key is trying to copy exactly how the original speaker sounded. Match their speed, their rhythm, their intonation, even their emotion if you can. You're trying to be their shadow, their echo.
Ah, that's the shadowing part. Speaking right along with or just after them.
Exactly. The source calls this incredibly powerful because it works on multiple levels at once. It trains your ear to really hear the authentic sounds of English, the connected speech, the reductions, the intonation patterns, and crucially, it trains your mouth, your tongue, your whole vocal apparatus to produce those same sounds.
So it improves your listening and your speaking at the same time.
Precisely. There's a strong link. When your own mouth gets comfortable making the dija sound for did you, your ear gets much better at recognizing it instantly when someone else says it. It basically aligns your internal model of English sounds with the external reality. It trains your brain for the speed and patterns needed for real-time understanding.
It sounds quite intensive, but yeah, incredibly direct for getting used to how English actually sounds and feels.
It is, but you don't have to do it for hours. Start small. Maybe just shadow 1 or 2 interesting sentences you hear each day. Or dedicate 5-10 minutes to shadowing a short clip. Consistency beats duration here.
Okay, next technique, the 1-minute rewind. This sounds perfect for people with busy schedules.
It's designed exactly for that. The method is simple. Find any short video, about a minute long, where native speakers are talking naturally. First, watch it through once without subtitles, just like shadowing step 1, to get the general idea.
Then rewind. And this time.
This time, you pick one specific sentence that was maybe a bit fast or tricky, and you focus intensely just on that one sentence. Replay it again and again. Rewind just that little bit. Listen super carefully. Try to catch every single word.
What if you just can't get it?
If you're really stuck after a few tries, you can peek at the transcript or subtitles just for that sentence, but the main goal is to push your ear to decipher it first. Once you feel confident you've heard it correctly, pause and repeat that sentence out loud a few times, again trying to match the original speaker's rhythm and speed.
And you do this whole process within roughly 1 minute of video.
Yeah, the power isn't in the length of the video, it's in the depth of focus on a tiny segment. The source suggests that doing just 1 minute of this kind of super focused listening every single day, even for just a few weeks, can really build up your ear's ability to handle speed and connected speech. It's like high-intensity interval training for your ears.
Quality over quantity again. Deliberate, focused practice. Makes sense. Another method the source details is dictation practice. Okay, this sounds a bit like being back in school.
It might sound old school, yeah, but the source explains why it's uniquely useful for tackling fast, natural speech. The process is straightforward. Find a short audio clip, maybe just 1 or 2 sentences from a podcast, an interview, a movie scene. Play it once, listen very carefully.
And then write down exactly what you heard.
Exactly. Write down every word you can catch. Don't worry if there are gaps or you're unsure about some words initially. That's part of the process. Then play that same short clip again. Listen hard again, focusing on the parts you missed. Try to fill in the blanks in what you wrote. Repeat this listen and write cycle maybe 2 or 3 times for the same short clip.
And after you've tried your best,
Then you compare what you wrote to the actual transcript or subtitles. This is where the real learning kicks in. Dictation forces you to really confront the specific sounds or words that are tripping you up. Was it a connected sound? A word that was reduced? A small function word you just didn't hear?
it sharpens your ear's ability to distinguish sounds, improves your focus, and your auditory memory too.
And it's particularly brilliant, the source notes, for training you to catch those small, often unstressed function words like to, of, and is, are, and, which tend to get swallowed or heavily reduced in fast speech, but are vital for understanding the structure.
The source gives that great example I should have told you earlier.
Right. Which in natural fast speech almost always sounds like, I should have told you earlier. That should have collapses into shoulda.
I should have known. You could have called.
Exactly. Dictation helps you hear that shoulda or coulda sound and consciously connect it back to the meaning of should have or could have. Then, practicing saying, I should have told you yourself helps lock in that sound meaning connection. Dictation makes those invisible reductions visible, or rather audible, to your ear.
Okay, let's circle back to chunking. We know what it is, recognizing groups of words as units. But how do we actively train our brains to do that automatically?
The source suggests a method that's really about repeated exposure and active repetition. It involves listening to the same common phrases in chunks over and over, specifically in context.
So not just lists of phrases, but hearing them used naturally in real conversations, interviews, shows.
Exactly. Identify common chunks like, how's it going? What do you think? I'm not sure. It's kind of, let me see. Give me a second. Find examples of these being used naturally. And then the active part. Repeat these complete chunks out loud yourself, regularly, daily, if possible.
So again, it's combining the listening recognition with the active production.
Right. The goal is to make your brain and your mouth so familiar with the sound of these chunks like, how's it going? What do I think? I'm not sure. It's ginda, let me see, gimme sec, that they become automatic. When you hear them, even spoken quickly and mashed together, your brain just instantly recognizes the whole unit and its meaning without having to decode word by word. It builds that automaticity.
It really is like learning longer vocabulary items that represent common ideas. That makes a lot of sense. Now, another technique that sounded really interesting was the listen and imagine method. This feels different, less analytical, more visual.
It is. And it taps into a different way of processing. The core idea, as the source explains it, is to train yourself to understand the meaning directly from the sound, without mentally translating everything into your native language first. How? By creating mental images or scenarios as you listen. They use the example sentence. We grabbed some coffee and headed downtown.
Okay, so instead of thinking, we grabbed, took some coffee, and headed, went towards downtown. That slow, word-by-word translation.
You just hear the sentence and immediately picture it. Maybe 2 people getting takeaway coffee cups, then walking together towards a city center area. You connect the English sounds directly to a visual, a scene, an experience. You bypass that translation step.
That must speed things up considerably.
Hugely, because that mental translation is often a major bottleneck. By visualizing, you're connecting the sound directly to the idea, which is much closer to how native speakers process language. We hear words and instantly access concepts, images, feelings.
The source suggests practicing this actively, maybe closing your eyes while listening.
Yeah, they suggest trying it with short sentences or dialogues. Close your eyes, listen, and consciously try to build a mental movie of what's being described. They give a practice example. She ran out of the house, jumped into the car, and drove off without saying a word.
Okay, so as I hear that, I'm not thinking about verb tenses or prepositions.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it. Woman rushing, door slam, car door, get in, car speeds away, silence. The whole little story.
Exactly. Your mind grabs the sequence, the meaning, maybe the feeling, urgency, anger, because you linked the sounds directly to that dynamic mental picture. This technique helps you focus on the overall message and the flow of ideas in fast speech, even if you miss a few small details. And the source says even just 5 minutes a day practicing this can really strengthen that direct comprehension skill.
5 minutes a day again. Small, consistent steps seem to be the theme here. It's about fundamentally changing how you listen. We also briefly mentioned repeating after a pause earlier, which the source calls the echo method. How does that differ slightly from shadowing?
It's similar, but focuses more on immediate recall and mimicry, sentence by sentence. With the echo method, you find some audio, play just one sentence, and then hit pause immediately.
And in that silence, you try to repeat the sentence back.
Yes, exactly as you just heard it. Try to perfectly echo the speed, the rhythm, the ups and downs of the intonation, the feeling. Then you unpause, play the next sentence, pause again, and echo that one. It's less about speaking along with the person, like shadowing can be, and more about that immediate, accurate repetition after hearing it.
This must really sharpen your ear for the precise details of pronunciation and rhythm.
It really does. And just like shadowing, it works on both listening and speaking. It trains your ear for detail, and it trains your mouth to produce those patterns accurately. Getting your tongue and brain used to the physical feel of making those fast English sounds and rhythms makes them much easier to recognize when you hear others use them. The source emphasizes that even a few minutes of this daily helps your own speech sound more natural and significantly boosts your ability to decode fast speech from others.
Okay, and the last active technique the source highlights is active listening. This sounds broader than just hearing words.
It is. It's about listening beyond the literal words to understand the speaker's full message, their attitude, their emotion, what they're emphasizing, the subtext.
Because native speakers use things like speed, volume, stress, tone of voice to convey a lot of meaning. Yeah?
Absolutely. Like the example, I really don't want to go. That extra stress and maybe slight elongation on really tells you instantly, much more than the words alone, just how strong their feeling is. You get the emotional weight.
So even if other parts of the sentence are fast or mumbled, catching that key stressed word in the overall tone can give you the main point or feeling.
Exactly. You can practice this by deliberately listening to dialogues maybe in movies or podcasts and focusing specifically on trying to identify the emotion behind the words. What's the speaker's attitude? Which words are they hitting harder? You'll often find you can grasp the core meaning and intention even if you didn't catch every single syllable. It trains your brain to focus on the most salient information being conveyed through sound.
Wow. Okay, so we have the Y-connected speech, stress intonation, chunking, and we have this amazing toolkit of active techniques. Shadowing, 1-minute rewind, dictation, listen and imagine, echo method, active listening.
But the source adds a couple more important layers, right?
Yes, context and accents. First, the power of background knowledge, which the source calls context-based understanding.
How does knowing about the topic help you understand fast speech? It seems like it shouldn't matter. Oh, it matters hugely. Think about it. If you're listening to people talk quickly about, say, a sport you follow closely or a hobby you know a lot about, your brain isn't starting from zero. It already has a whole network of related vocabulary, common phrases, typical ideas, and sentence structures activated for that specific topic.
So it can kind of predict what words are likely to come up? Or fill in small gaps if you miss something tiny?
Precisely. That existing knowledge acts like a framework or a set of expectations. It significantly reduces the mental effort needed because your brain isn't trying to identify every single sound in isolation. It's using the context to anticipate, predict, and confirm what it's hearing. It makes the process much more efficient.
So the source encourages listeners to deliberately choose material on topics they're already familiar with or interested in.
Yes, strongly. It's a smart strategy because you're not just practicing listening, you're often learning more about something you enjoy, which keeps you motivated. And it builds confidence because you're more likely to understand successfully.
And the other point was about pronunciation practice, helping listening. How does working on your own speaking improve how well you hear others?
It creates a really strong feedback loop, like we talked about with shadowing and repeating punks. When you actively practice saying things like gonna for going to, wanna for want to, didya for did you, your mouth, your muscles, your brain learn the physical mechanics of producing those sounds.
So when you hear someone else say gonna, it's not some alien sound pattern anymore.
Exactly. It's a pattern you have physically produced. You understand how it's made. That deep familiarity makes it much, much easier for your ear to instantly recognize and correctly interpret that sound when someone else says it quickly. Your own speaking practice refines your internal auditory map of English.
That's really fascinating. Your speaking actually calibrates your listening.
It really does. Language skills are all interconnected. Improving one often helps the others.
And finally, the source tackles the elephant in the room. Accents. Not all native speakers sound the same, far from it.
Yeah, a really important point because it can be a major source of confusion and frustration. The source is upfront about the reality. American English sounds different from British, which sounds different from Australian, Canadian, Irish, Scottish. And within each of those, you have countless regional variations. Expecting everyone to sound like the one voice actor on your language learning app is just setting yourself up for difficulty.
So the answer isn't to just stick to the accent you know best.
No, quite the opposite. The solution recommended is deliberate, varied exposure. Actively seek out listening materials featuring different accents. Watch British comedies. Listen to Australian news podcasts. Follow American YouTubers from different regions. Listen to music from various English-speaking countries.
This trains your brain to be more flexible, to not get stuck expecting only one pronunciation.
Exactly. The goal is to develop adaptability, to train your brain to recognize that different patterns of sounds can still map to the same underlying words and meanings. The source gives that example of casual American speech.
Hey man, I'm heading out soon. You coming or nah?
Right. Listen to the sound, sir. You've got the dropped G in headin' and comin'. Super common in informal American English, and nah is a very casual alternative to no.
Things you might not find in a formal grammar book.
But things you hear constantly in real life. Practicing listening to these variations, maybe even trying to playfully imitate them yourself sometimes, like, hey man, heading out, coming, or nah. It helps normalize them for your ear. It expands your brain's dictionary of acceptable English sound patterns.
It's about embracing the reality and richness of how English is actually spoken globally.
Precisely. Your brain learns to become a more flexible decoder, mapping a wider range of incoming sounds to the correct meanings.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together now.
Mm-hmm.
We understand the mechanisms that connected speech, stress, chunks. We have the toolkit shadowing, dictation, imagination, context, accents. How does this all come together in a real-world listening situation?
The source uses a simple, relatable example to show how we focus on the overall message. Imagine someone telling you about their morning.
Ugh, I was running late for work, spilled coffee all over my shirt, totally missed the bus, and then had to call a ride just to make it to the meeting on time.
Now, even if they said that pretty fast, maybe like running late, spilled coffee, missed the bus, had to call a ride, using all those natural reductions and connections, you almost certainly got the whole story, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Sounds like a nightmare morning.
Exactly. You understood the main points, the sequence, the stress, the frustration, because you focused on the key information, the content words, the chunks, running late, spilled coffee, missed the bus, call a ride, and the overall context. Late for work. You didn't need to consciously analyze every single the sound or reduced vowel. Your brain extracted the core message. That's what effective real-world listening is often about, getting the message, not perfection on every syllable.
And the source really highlights using entertainment movies, TV shows, songs as a great and actually fun way to practice all this stuff in context.
Yeah, they give some solid strategies for movies and shows. Maybe start watching with English subtitles to help your comprehension initially.
But then challenge yourself, right?
Yeah.
Replay scenes without the subtitle.
Yes. And pause after lines you find interesting or difficult. Repeat them out loud, using that echo or shadowing technique. They also suggest keeping a little notebook or a note on your phone. When you hear a useful phrase or chunk repeatedly, jot it down.
Like noticing that we've got to hurry means the same as we have to hurry.
Exactly. Actively collecting these common spoken forms builds your mental library of chunks and makes them easier to recognize next time.
And songs. Music seems like a fantastic tool for internalizing the rhythm and flow.
It really is. The advice is pick songs you genuinely like where you can find the lyrics online. Listen a couple of times just for enjoyment, then listen again while reading the lyrics to connect the sounds to the words.
And then sing along.
Yes, singing along is brilliant practice. It forces you to match the singer's rhythm, their stress patterns, and crucially, their connected speech. Songs are absolutely full of natural reductions like gonna, wanna, kinda, boda, and because music taps into emotion and memory, these patterns tend to stick in your head really well.
It makes the practice feel less like work and more like fun, which is vital for consistency, isn't it?
Which brings us to the final, really crucial point the source emphasizes throughout. Improving your understanding of fast English isn't just about listening more, it's about listening smarter and better. It requires intention and consistency.
Setting small, achievable goals. Maybe it's that 1-minute rewind daily, or 10 minutes of shadowing 3 times a week. Or just consciously using the listen and imagine technique during your commute.
Exactly. The source is very clear. It's those small, deliberate steps done consistently over time that lead to real, lasting improvement. It might feel slow sometimes. You'll definitely have days where you feel like you're stuck, but you have to stick with it.
Because gradually things do change.
They do. Your ears literally get better at tuning into the sounds. Your brain gets faster at processing these natural patterns. And eventually, often without even realizing exactly when it happened, you find yourself understanding more and more without having to strain so hard. It starts to feel more automatic, more effortless.
That point where the conscious effort starts to fade away.
Yeah.
That's really the goal, isn't it?
It is. So the source really lays out a path. First, understand why it sounds fast. Connected speech, reductions, stress, chunks. Then actively train your perception using specific techniques: shadowing, dictation, imagination, active listening, repetition. And finally, support that training by using context, getting exposure to different accents, and being patient and consistent. All these pieces work together.
But maybe the most powerful tool of all is just that commitment, that decision to keep going.
And to follow the source's advice, to make English something you live with, not just something you study formally. Weave it into your life, your hobbies, your entertainment, your daily routines.
The more time you spend actively engaging with it in these ways.
The more natural it all becomes. And eventually, understanding fast native English won't feel like a daunting challenge anymore. It'll just be listening. And you'll actually be able to relax and enjoy the conversations, the movies, the music.
It's a really empowering perspective shift this source offers. So just to wrap up our deep dive here, understanding fast native English boils down to recognizing it's not just speed, but the natural evolution of sounds through connected speech, the crucial role of stress and intonation, and our brain's amazing ability to process language in meaningful chunks.
And mastering it isn't about finding some magic bullet, but about consistent, active engagement. It's about training your ears with deliberate practice like dictation and repetition, syncing your perception and production with shadowing and echoing, building faster comprehension through visualization, tuning into deeper meaning with active listening, and smartly using context and broad accent exposure as your allies.
It is definitely a journey, not a destination, and one that absolutely requires patience and that steady, consistent effort. Those small daily actions really do compound over time, building the skills you need.
And the payoff is huge. By applying these techniques, by training your ears and speeding up your brain's processing of real spoken patterns, you really can boost your confidence, cut down on that frustration, and ultimately unlock the ability to truly understand and even genuinely enjoy English spoken naturally and quickly.
You know, that final thought from the source about English fluency being less about finishing a course of study and more about integrating the language into your life, really living with it, makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does shifting your mindset like that, seeing it not as a task but as a constant companion, change the whole learning experience? Does it make challenges like understanding fast speech feel less like obstacles and more like just interesting features of a landscape you get to explore every single day? Something to think about as you continue your own journey with the language.